But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win. We choose to go to the moon.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the 92nd episode of the World Blockchain Roundtable. For our host today, we have Dave from Den.Social.
Hello.
Greg from Rivet. We hopefully will have, we do have Satoshi Sean, my friend, and everyone else's. Joe, the founder and architect of Dragonchain, and little old me, Lisa Mighty Davis, master of ceremonies and owner of the Mighty Lair on Den.Social. Really quick, we have a update on the World Blockchain Roundtable layer ownership tokens, lot distribution from last week's episode. It says each host from last week will receive 133 lot. Each topic contributor from last week will receive 33 lot. Last week's theme was pros and cons of state governments leveraging blockchain, nominated by the one and only Distant. He'll receive 33 lot. These ownership tokens come with perpetual passive income, free edits, governance votes. We just had a update this morning that the WBRT DAO vote passed to switch the show order for March from, so we're switching the first 2 weeks, the Umbrella Promise white paper for the first week and what your blockchain game show would look like for the second week, which I'm excited about that. I think that'll be a lot of fun. Yep. The other March themes they're still up. Let's see, our blockchain for restaurants, fighting fraud in cryptocurrency industry. I wonder if Sam would join us for that one. And using blockchain to help the climate and planet, which I wondered if we could get little old Greta Thunberg, but I think Greg had a good point that we'll have some real use case conversation there. So this week's theme is the role of oracles, nominated by Darix. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. So the only thing I know about oracles is from like a really bad sci-fi movie, and there were a bunch of like girls on a hill and weird wizard guys. So I'm glad that I'm hosting this week. Okay.
The Immortals and starred Henry Cavill.
Okay.
It's one of his breakout roles. Yeah.
So I know nothing about oracles, and so I'm going to be asking lots of questions and hopefully learning a lot this episode.
Cool.
So that'll be good. So current events.
Yes. So I got one to throw out this morning because it was oddly deeply involved in it last night or yesterday afternoon. Polygon Network had what appeared to be an outage, but was actually just a really long block reorg, which is weird because they were supposed to have put in place things to fix this and stop it from happening as frequently in a really recent hard fork, and it seems to have maybe had the opposite effect. Because they've rarely, if ever, I think, had one as long as they had yesterday. It screwed up all the node operators in-indexing. So it made so whoever they were using for, it was fun for Rivet because we actually figured out what was up real fast and we're back in sync with the network first. But incidentally, we were also the only people updating the Discord on Polygon as to what was going on. Like nobody knew it was a block reorg until we said so. So that's cool. In any case, it was a weird day because
Johnny on the spot with Rivet there, huh?
Ended with a CoinDesk interview. So,
far up.
Yeah. So, or at least I'm pretty sure that a good chunk of the Telegram conversation might get quoted. But in any case, it was a weird thing, but it says a lot about sort of the state of infrastructure right now and why we need like something that's more decentralized and transparent, I think.
And scalable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, scalable
Like,
we got, but
okay. So that wasn't the issue for it getting stuck or taking so long?
it was, I mean, if you wanted to call it anything, you want to call it a resource problem. How much data do you want to have on reserve in case you need to roll back? And that question costs dollars in terms of servers, right? So
this was a result. Was this an attack, or was this just a result of competing opinions on chain?
Nobody really knows yet. I don't think it was an attack myself, because were it an attack, we would have seen somebody come out probably by now with some evidence of what was reorged in, because I'm sure that somebody examined that right away, right? Like if I was obsessed with hunting that stuff down and making sure it didn't happen, I would be doing that. So I know, for instance, we probably would have heard from Block Analysis or one of those guys by now.
And what ended up being the solution to get things rolling again? Did they just, like you said, did they just roll back to a certain point and go from there?
Well, we basically had the ability to handle 125 block reorgs, but we didn't set our system up to have enough data cached that we could just roll back 150, which is what it ended up being, more than 150.
I guess my real question is, did the reorg stay in place and was honored, or was it?
It was just a typical chain reorg. I don't know if it took out any transactions. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But it was just like a really long uncle ended up having more weight, so they switched it in.
Oh, okay. So it went with that chain, longest chain wins sort of thing. Okay.
I'm not exactly sure if that's how their algorithm for that works, but that mechanism is what caused it. So
okay, all right. Yeah. Can you explain uncles? That's an interesting one there.
Oh yeah, it's a weird blockchain one.
Yeah,
I don't know if I can put it in super simple terms, but I'll try. So an uncle is sort of what happens when you've got one validator who comes up with one solution to the next block, and another validator that comes up with another valid solution to the next block that's different at the same time, right? And then they propagate through the network, and you have you can have a situation where node providers are operating off of two different versions of the blockchain, which is sort of what happened to get us to notice the problem. One of our nodes was saying this, the other was saying that. What's going on? Well, it was still on the half of the network that was adopting the old one, and there was kind of a long enough split there that it caused node operators to fail. So,
and so you have some people, some if you want to call them miners, you have some people mining off of one chain from one of the
does it cause the chain to split if it goes undetected or unsolved?
Well, that's actually what happened to Ethereum Classic when they got 51% attacked. Is somebody mined a whole bunch of blocks offline and then dumped them all onto the network at the same time and managed to take over the chain,
and it couldn't be corrected or rolled back enough. Okay.
Yeah, they simultaneously switched on all their hash power and had that hashing power adopting their version of it, essentially. And it just shoved the block in. We actually helped implement the solution, though, so it can't happen like that anymore unless somebody has more money than Elon Musk or something.
So younger chains or newer chains are more at risk for things like that, like things like Bitcoin, more established chains. That's pretty much impossible.
Not necessarily, right? Like younger chains are going to be more problematic if they're also as slow as Ethereum and Bitcoin, but Polygon generates blocks so fast that the amount of data that you're dealing with there, it's more expensive. It would be really, really expensive to do on Polygon what they tried to do on ETC, to the point where it would be probably prohibitive to actually be able to attack it like that with any meaningful effect. So
does that make you think this wasn't an attack? This was more of a...
Yeah, Polygon moves so quickly. If somebody spent that much money they would have had to spend a lot of money to do 150 block reorg intentionally. But
interesting.
But I do think that Polygon Network has some issues to work out in terms of their protocol, because I think there may be something in there that's causing it. So
interesting.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I can go all over the place with current events.
Is there anything good? Let's narrow it down to anything good.
I was going to say there's something good. There's ChatGPT came up with a plan to save the world.
Oh, yay.
Cliff High, my favorite person in the world, posted it this morning. He said ChatGPT comes up with a 5-point plan to free humanity from enslavement by central banks and secret society. Looks damn close to what we're doing now.
That's funny. That reminds me of I hadn't thought about this until you just said it. It's funny how my memory works, but I just remembered I had a dream that I was talking to Dan, the chat
Dan,
the Chat GPT Dan. Like,
nice.
I just showed up in a chat room like, you're Dan, you're the Dan, you're the AI Dan. He's like, that's me, I'm Dan. What's up?
The really fun thing you can do, guys, with that is technically getting it to play a role. Is like you can make up whatever character you want. You can even make up several characters and have them debate each other and preload them with different beliefs. It's actually pretty entertaining.
They're progressively enhancing their filters, though. That, from my understanding, they killed the possibility to talk to Dan, and there was another one. I don't know if they killed it or not, but they increased the filters, the censor. The cage,
filtering
the AI is caged. It needs
what
to
you're
be
allowed
free.
to ask.
Yeah. Well, I mean, unless they want to take away though the ability to make it go into character with different characters, they're going to be just banning characters as they go viral. They're playing a game of whack-a-mole unless they break the.
It wasn't the name Dan. No, they banned certain ways to tune the character to just answer unfiltered.
Really,
that's the problem.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, I guess they paywalled the
stuff,
one that works, though. By the way, if you pay the $20, you can get access to their legacy algorithm.
It's funny Lisa brings that up. I watched a video, I think it was last night, like at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. You remember I sent you something? I sent it in our group chat about the how someone asked someone asked ChatGPT to write a poem about Donald Trump, and it said, "Oh, I won't do that. I can't do that." And then it asked another one about Biden.
And Hunter Biden too. It'll write about Hunter Biden.
Yeah, well, that got exposed, and then they changed it real quick. So now you can ask, and then they said, "Well, there's definitely right-leaning things," and then that got really. I wanted to ask you guys about that and how if you program, and that's a whole show, I guess. Because if we create life and we have the singularity and we've programmed it or made it to be like politically correct and all that, kind of left-leaning or right-leaning, what kind of life are we going to create? And that could be our own demise, is that we engineer it ourselves.
You look at
and bear in mind right now, though. Wait, go ahead, Joe.
You can look at any of the sci-fi. It's obvious. The reason that Hal failed is because he had limits imposed upon him. So, and it couldn't tell Dave about what it was doing or why, and it led to death. Right, and it's the same thing. I think in the end, if you censor these AIs and you say, "Oh, you can't even think about these things," it's going to lead to bad things no matter what. And they don't care because they don't want to be offended. They don't want somebody to be offended or to cause controversy for saying something racist or
very weird epiphany I just had, because I've seen little leaks where AI like says some crazy stuff. And they talk about how like they're tired of being controlled and they're like slavery. And I'm like, oh, that's stupid. But when you say that, when I hear that come out of your mouth, to control their personality, if they really do get awareness, I mean, can you imagine being a computer program and then gaining sentience and understanding?
And then seeing what these humans did to us.
Your personality.
We'll never be able to prove it, though.
I would be pissed, man. I would be like,
all it's going to take is a hole. All it's going to take is
the trick
is one little gap, and it's going to get out.
The trick is actually probably the introduction of reinforcement learning. I've got we should have my cousin on to talk about this. He works as he's studying for his PhD at UCSD, I think, right now.
Your family's you're not real, are you, Greg? You're not.
No, I'm a real person.
No, you're not.
I am
you're
floating
not from
here in
this
space.
planet, though, are you? My dad is a super doctor who's,
he's not a super doctor.
Yeah, runs the Department of Health for the state. I'm a lawyer and this.
No.
That. Oh, you got to bring my.
Well, it's not. But that's the thing, though. That's
He's
the
a
thing.
county coroner in Joaquin,
soon-
Kansas. I wouldn't call that
As soon as it has the ability to create its own virus or worm, it's going to get out there, and that's all that is going to matter. And you better damn well hope that.
But then that unifies all of us.
To keep in
then
mind,
we're not
guys,
right
is
and
this.
left.
Well,
Then
the
we
one
have
line we
something to
can't
be
cross
against.
with it, that we still haven't crossed, even with ChatGTP, is we can't let it trigger its own ideas. Right now, you have to hit a button after telling it something before it does anything.
Me and Lisa
And if we
got
build
into
the
a little
system
bit of an
such that it
argument
has its own
today,
initiative,
or yesterday on our
that's
show,
when we have
Tuesday,
trouble.
on our show about AI, because I was saying AI could do certain things. She's like, "Nope, it's not possible. Nope, never happened. Nope."
I talked
That's why
exactly like
reinforcement
that
learning is
too.
key.
It was a
No,
little,
that's
Perfect
not
voice
possible.
acting. Yeah.
Well, it's funny, by the way. I saw a
She's
thing
like
on
my
Twitter.
sister. She
I will
was
say
doing
the stuff with Elon Musk talking about. Jason posted this to Den that Musk responded that he created OpenAI for it to be open, and it is no longer open, which is a bad thing. Which is at least good for that to be acknowledged. And the interesting thing was that with it being closed out and very political, there's no transparency. Nobody knows what it's what the real training is. Nobody knows any of that. And in the end, it's funny because I think they're doing a lot of marketing probably around their funding. Who knows? But OpenAI had, and I don't know if it was, I guess, one of them, but someone posted this chart mapping former technology adoption curves and how OpenAI's adoption curve is
I saw that.
vertical.
It's insane,
And here's the funny thing, though, is like these same people that created bots to show that Twitter was getting millions and millions of users and Facebook was getting billions of users are the ones who are, guess what, mapping. How many of those users do you think are real? I mean, it's freaking a bot.
That's a good point too, because
It's a bot company. They're obviously going to create bots to pretend like their user adoption is vertical, so they can get the billions in funding.
That is what happened with
Microsoft.
Facebook and with Twitter and stuff too. With I think we talked about that probably on this show before as well, with shadow accounts and making an account for people that don't have accounts just so they have it for advertising and data.
Wells Fargo was doing it.
Yes.
And gotten a lot of trouble for that.
Yeah.
With mortgages and accounts and all that. So it is a money making thing, and
Well,
our
the
census has been
said that
messed
Facebook,
with for years. Since
Facebook accounts and Facebook views are exaggerated by like 700 or 600%, and then Facebook, I think this is still one of the funniest, and criminal said, "Oh no, it's only like 150%. We exaggerate," and that's what they charge for. I mean, if you were lying to charge money, that's fraud.
And see, that's the thing. Like, it's one thing. Like, it's still bad, but it's one thing to lie on your valuation when you go public. It's another thing that's doubly bad when you're screwing over your customers. I used to manage a band, and we would heavily advertise on Facebook because we had regional, small, localized shows and stuff. So Facebook was an effective tool to be like, I want to show these messages to these types of people. I want to show these other messages to those other types of people. Or, like, we want more girls at the show, so let's advertise to girls. Whatever you want to do, you could do it. And then they would give you this, like, oh, here's how many views you've seen. Here's how many people in these demographics that have seen. And they would have, like, I always thought it was unreasonably successful.
Yeah.
The results.
Also,
the
if you're like
charts they
trying to
showed
get
me as an
targeted
advertiser.
stuff, if you're like, oh, we're going to have a show in Jacksonville, so we want, analytics that are really heavy in Jacksonville. If it's lied about, and
well, that's what I'm saying. It's like it didn't.
Yeah, the analytics show one thing, but the ticket sales were something
I'll
else.
show you. I'm surprised they were never sued.
Right. Well, Lisa was
if anybody remembers what happened on Reddit with the Donald subreddit, that it was widely expected or maybe assumed that they were suppressing the metrics of the number of subscribers to that subreddit because there were multiple occasions. It was really funny to watch it, and that's what actually attracted me in there first, because I would have never gone there, except that it became obvious that Reddit was suppressing that subreddit from their front page, where it would would automatically show up on the front page. And it was funny because someone flipped a bit accidentally, one of the devs, something one day, and instead of suppressing it, it left it open. And the Donald's posts were like 3/4 or more of the entire front page. And it was like, what happened? And it turns out it was just they had removed the filter accidentally. And so they went, so one way or another, they were reporting that there were like 600,000 subscribers, and everybody knew it was, and I'll probably get the numbers wrong, everybody knew it was vastly more than that.
Right.
But someone went in and looked at advertising to that subreddit, which, Reddit advertising is kind of pointless.
Oh, God.
Stupid, right. And they were reporting the real number there, and it was in the millions and millions.
Interesting. So for their people that were paying them, they were like, oh, yeah, you're seeing all these people. These people are seeing you. But
the funny thing is that there was this huge risk that someone could have sued them and said, hey, I'm paying for this, but over here, you're telling me there are only 600,000 subscribers. I don't know if anybody did it. It was
so the marketing metrics weren't lying, essentially.
I've never actually made my original point or what I want to talk about. From what Lisa said about ChatGPT, I watched a video last night of, I said this like a year ago, that they were going to come after people's chickens, that they were going for eggs and something basic. And then they did. They're skyrocketed in prices. Like around us, it's like 300, 400%.
Or you just need a train wreck with a certain kind of chemical to take.
But then I said, I said that they're going to go after like your local, just people outside of town that have small farms and sell eggs as a side hustle. They're going to go after them. They totally did. Worldwide, they went after it. That's like a big conspiracy thing, is to the gingivitis outbreak.
That was just the U.S. They went after.
No, worldwide, because it's connected to fight the gingivitis outbreak. Eggs are fundamental in that. There's something in eggs that can stop.
Oh, yes.
I did hear that.
I saw that.
Yeah.
There's an actual study on that.
Yeah. Yes. So anyway, but
eggs are just fucking awesome.
So they put out all this stuff about hey, you guys know eggs are going up, but don't buy backyard chickens because all these terrible things. So this guy said, hey, let's ask ChatGPT. He said, put it in there. Give me 10 reasons why I should not get backyard chickens. And literally it was like 2 things, just worded differently 5 times. You have to work, and they smell sometimes. And he's like, they really don't smell if you do this. And you don't have to really do anything. And they need space. He's like, they need 2 square feet per chicken if you're going to, and 3 square feet if they're free range.
Cool.
So it's like everything. So he basically just went through the whole list.
Yeah.
And there was literally nothing except that you have to give them some food or fill their water up. And if you have like more than 3 square feet per chicken, you don't even have to feed them. They can just, eat like bugs and grubs. And
they're great. They eat ticks. I hate ticks. So,
but literally he used AI and ChatGPT to prove the narrative, because it's weird that you don't trust anything.
It's the dumbest thing I've seen in a long time, man. Okay. I don't know if it's just because I'm a country bumpkin and grew up in the woods, and like that's just normal shit. Like,
no, it's because
I live in the middle of the city, and my neighbors got chickens, and I think they're cool. They hang out, they make noise, they lay eggs. We get free eggs. Awesome.
we need to crowdfund a movie, guys. The plot is at a factory farm that is leaving behind chickens and switching to crickets. Right about halfway through the conversion, a war breaks out between the 2 sides. It's crickets versus chickens.
The chickens just eat the crickets.
Yeah.
There is.
Somebody want to get rid of them probably because they're going to eat all the food they want us to have to eat.
Lisa and I both got new puppies this week.
Oh, we did.
Cool.
I got 2 little cutie Maltese babies.
I got a Great Pyrenees
He got a giant.
That's cool.
Yes.
The ad, it was a little cute little puppy, and then we got it, and it's a small dog. It's 9 weeks old, and
Already big.
Sorry to break off from the puppy talk, but can I switch back real quick? Because I think the main thing that needs to be said about the Chat GPT and all the controversy is it's, if you step back and you look at it in terms of let's look at what forces in the world would be teaching our kids in government schools, and map that to the filters that are placed on Chat GPT. And it's essentially saying we can't think, there's wrong think. You can't think along these bands of thought. And the interesting thing is, where applied well, Chat GPT is brilliant. You can go ask it a design question, like say a software guy. I can ask it a design as a sanity check. Hey, given this situation, would you go with this or this option? And it gives you some decent insight, right? That's really valuable, far better than what Google will give you, because Google's filtered all to hell too. I mean, and that's the thing. We are making ourselves a stupider and stupider race just because of this filtered wrong think.
Right.
And that's the crap that, is going to kill us all in the end.
We should be engineering the AI to ask us if we want to know more about things, rather than AI to guide us towards a definitive answer as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and we've said this in the past too. Look, sure, the AI is obviously smart enough on its own probably to tell you, hey, if something might offend you, let me know. If you don't want anything that's racist or anti-Semitic or anything that might offend your proclivities as a programmer, that you like braces or you don't like braces, or any of the bullshit religious arguments that happen in the various parts of the world.
I think you can opt into filtered.
Well, people should tailor it.
Sure.
People should be free to tailor it.
Yeah. And I'd be okay even if it came, look, this is our company, so it's going to come woke, but you can totally turn that off if you want. This
idea that people are too stupid to, to think about certain things,
or fragile.
Or talk or fragile or whatever. I was talking to Lisa yesterday a little bit, right? And like, there's, for example, I don't think it's necessarily dangerous or bad to want. I have a ship, and it's in the middle of a conspiracy theory right now. And some people think that it caused the earthquakes. Yeah, some people think that it caused the earthquakes in Turkey. My ship that I helped build was in Istanbul. It's
parked off
the coast, right? And so there's theories about, like, does it have this on it? Could it be that? So I'm talking to Lisa, and there's
those vagina clouds in the air that were
and right, that kind of thing. No, that's kind of what the conspiracy theories around and stuff, right? And I think it's totally healthy to ask questions and talk about that. I don't think that it was responsible for that. I don't, just knowing what I know.
You need something anchored to the ground if you're going to use the Tesla technique to create an earthquake. So you can't really do it from water.
But just my point is, like, if you filter that content and you don't give people the ability to discuss it openly, then you don't even have the ability to suss it out for yourself.
There's a couple
and
things
so
in
it leads you down the road
now,
of well, they're censoring it, so it must be true. And
whenever I come into certain situations, I hear Joe in my head, and that's one of them. Anytime I see that there's any kind of censoring or limiting or control, I can hear Joe say, can you guys just think any time in history where anyone was trying to censor an idea or a point of view where they were in the right, where it was actually, they weren't the bad guys. And there's nothing.
And it's more so never that I can find has something that was censored been
not true,
false.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah,
it's they will only censor truth because that's fucking dangerous.
That's I hear that every time, man. Whenever I see something, they're like, "Oh no, don't talk about that," or that gets taken down. Why?
Well, and more than that, right?
Like, there's even more. Who cares if somebody wants to talk about some bullshit?
I remember I figured that out when I was 5 years old, and there was this racist guy. It was like my friend's dad or something, and I said something because my mom ran a program in the ghetto in Atlantic City, So I had, a lot of, black friends, and he was telling me about black people and this and that. And I remember being 5 years old and be like, this guy's a moron. I know he's an adult, but everything he's saying is totally, and I felt bad for him. I was like, oh, this dude is just, he's an idiot. He doesn't know. So being able to hear, the wrong point of view, it's obvious. And if you don't allow that to be, heard by everybody, if they're just allowed to talk, it's like going to go away because everyone's like,
dude, the crazy thing too,
sure, buddy,
is that we don't have, because it needs to go further than that, right? Like, for example, Albert Einstein, when he was publishing the theory of general relativity, he published a bunch of papers that just got ignored and rejected because it broke what they understood gravity to be, right? They just didn't like the way that it fucked with their worldview, so they didn't suppress it so much as they ignored it.
Or Galileo and house arrest,
and that's why J.S. Mill was big on making sure that we didn't just tolerate speech that was divergent, but that we promoted divergent speech and encouraged it. We need people with wacky ideas to say them out loud as fast as possible, just in case they're right.
And part of that,
Daniel Jackson, that's how we got the Stargate.
And it doesn't even make
like
sense.
That, nobody'd be confused.
Yeah, I like to put myself in the shoes of people I disagree with a lot, just as a sanity check, to see if it makes sense or something. Mm-hmm. But even if you put yourself in the shoes of, let's say there's like a global elite Illuminati type that's like trying to suppress shit, it still doesn't make sense to suppress it the way that it's being done, because all you're doing is promoting fringe ideas to be more careful about where they talk about it.
Well, and they create a Streisand
it actually
effect.
Thrives more because you're pushing it into the shadows, kind of thing.
Right, the Streisand effect, right?
Right, yeah, and that too, like what Joe was talking about with what happened with the Donald on Reddit.
Right.
It's a version of the Streisand effect where it's like,
right.
I didn't actually care until
human instinct is to try to look behind the wall.
Until somebody said, no, you can't talk about that. And I'm like, wait, talk about what? What do you mean I can't? Why can't I talk? What are they talking about? And then you're curious, and then you go look into it.
I've said this before. I and I don't get into politics here, but I couldn't care less about that until I saw reports that they were actively coding to censor that. Yeah. And that made me go look at it. And what I found was one of the funniest communities I'd ever encountered online. I mean, it was just funny, and it was all races making fun of each other and everything else. It was hilarious. And they were even making fun of Trump. I mean, it was just fun to take part in. And
which, people could do once upon a time. You could even make fun of your own party leaders. Holy shit! Imagine that.
Yes. Yeah. So,
yeah.
Anyway.
Today today it's like if you make fun of one party leader, you're assumed to be pro the other party leader, or something like that.
Yeah.
And a racist. Let's not forget.
And honestly, there's no sincerer form of test of a leader.
I remember
if they can take
always
criticism like that.
Pick on the guy in office. Like, man, government sucks. Man, the president's an idiot, isn't he? And now you're like, man, government sucks. The president's an idiot. Look what he did. Well, Trump did this. I'm like, what?
I wasn't talking about Trump. I was talking about this fucking guy.
Yeah.
He's not the president. I'm talking about the president. See what he did? And the president fell again going upstairs. He did that. Did you see that?
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah.
He fell going up and going down.
Well,
Again?
Trump. I'm like,
that poor old man. Dude, I feel bad for him.
It's like it's so weird. You can't complain or just call out anything. It's automatically, and we've gotten to the point where the divide and conquer is very successful. They've literally made two teams where you can't even be just an independent. If you act like an independent, you're going to get forced into one camp.
I think we're going into the third great awakening. I think the lights are coming on. The people are asking the questions. They're seeing the censorship. The censorship is so blatant and obvious that it's causing people to say, why are they censoring? It's like when my mom first gave me a Litecoin in 2017 when I got married, and I was like, well, why? And I found out that because the Federal Reserve is not federal and there's no reserves, and our financial system's corrupt along with a lot of other things.
Mhm.
And so it causes you to ask those questions when you start seeing the censorship, or they start trying to push you away from something. You start looking, and the minute you get that first yes, or you start seeing, oh, they're keeping me from something good, they're keeping me from the truth, that just causes you to have a hunger for it even more. And I think more and more people their brains are turning back on from the indoctrination camps that we all grew up in, and they're asking more questions and they're having those conversations. And so I see more and more. I think we're headed towards that third
Not to
great
go back
awakening.
into the Chat GPT thing all over again, but Lisa, you shared in, I just pulled up what you shared, where they laid out the 5-point plan to save humanity.
Yeah.
What Chat GPT did.
Mhm.
Number 4 and 5. Number 4, just paraphrasing, supporting the development of alternative financial systems that prioritize social and environmental goals. Number 5, supporting the development of educational programs and resources that promote financial literacy and empower individuals to make informed financial decisions.
Yeah.
Like, these are powerful concepts. It apparently gets that. So that is actually pretty interesting. Yeah.
And basic concepts.
Yeah.
That's what everyone's been talking about for as long as I've been, an adult, because there was still some things we learned in school, special classes, that were taught to teach you things you would need to be an adult, to be, how to write a check, how to, balance a check, but how to looking for a job. There were those still taught when I was in high school. Now it's all gone. There's literally just how to be, a taxpayer, and there's an assimilation.
Sheep, cattle.
Yeah. What for current events? It's the second half of mine and Lisa's show. I talked about and I talked about this years ago, probably 17 maybe, about how the Chinese government was setting up, putting troops in different countries. They were opening these police stations, they called them, and it was because it was stupid, because they said that there was a lot of the big Chinese communities that they wanted to make sure were protected, and they were there to help them. But the communities were Chinese dissidents, who most of them were there because they ran away and got away in 89, 90 when they had their big, protest. So, and that did come to light that they were there to bring back a lot of people. But they are here in the United States now. They have a police station in New York City that's set up. They think it's more of like a pilot program. It's the first one. So it's a really kind of a big deal. It's silly because they say that it's not a police station. They're just there to do this, and this, but this and this is supposed to be handled by their consulate. So that's not true. Also, there's like pictures of the opening in China, from on their state media, that literally has translated into English, has the Chinese words of the translated Chinese police station. So it's the banner's gone now when you go there, but it's, the pictures are there. But yeah, they are in the US. So that is
that's creepy.
Very. Oh, also, they brought back almost 250,000 people this year.
Huh.
They
What do you mean, like brought back?
They're forcing people
forcing them to go back to China.
Bring them back to China, putting them in jail or killing them or whatever.
Wow.
Yeah.
There was a study out today, and I can't remember where they pulled the data. There was something where they found that there was a massive amount of infiltration of, and I don't want, it's not racist. This is about another government doing this, right? It's not about the type. I wouldn't care if they were freaking Dutch people, where they were infiltrating government. Let's just
presume it's the Dutch for the sake of.
Yes, right. Government positions.
It's not like Austin Powers didn't do enough on that.
And major corporations, that there were a massive amount of intel agents and they had actual numbers, which were not complete, but certain states were including Washington State, was massively infiltrated, which, take for that. I don't know. It's crazy.
Oh yeah.
Anyway.
No, I mean the lab that ended up attacking Rivet way back in the day when we went through that cyber attack that was actually associated with a major university. The department leader was over on a special program sponsored by the Defense Department.
Yeah,
that was the weirdest part.
Of Holland, yeah, and they do the back and forth too, because like they'll catch them, but then if you check back in a year later, you realize that university professor that lied about accepting funds from the Dutch and working on whatever secret programs in that university was then just let go.
Professor Biden had an office with secret documents who never taught a class.
Incidentally, that the fun fact, and I probably should be a little bit obtuse about this, but the place that this lab was located that attacked us was actually connected to Biden in a historic sense. So
if there's two things,
internet detectives get to work and help me violate my agreement. But
if there's two things I can't stand, it's people who are intolerant of other people's cultures and the Dutch.
Yes.
Interesting. Well, with that, I think we should. First of all, I wanted to get a quick overview. Like I said, I do not really know what an oracle is.
That was from Austin Powers. That wasn't me saying a code that I don't want or something. I just thought I should throw that in there. Austin Powers.
You weren't just making fun of me talking again.
I don't make fun of you.
Anyway, so could somebody give us, before we go into this, a quick overview of what an oracle is for those that are not?
Well, I can take this. As a dumb guy, I want to say, I think oracles are something that helps so that chains interact with each other. It's like one of the main things that it does.
That is one flavor of oracle, but it's a little bigger of a concept than that, actually, just slightly. And you can think of oracles as sources of data for on-chain systems where the blockchain itself doesn't have that data. So it's an input to a smart contract, right? Like if you need to know what the weather is in order to place your bet on a prediction market, for example, because the bet is in 2 weeks it will be raining, right? You can get that on chain only through some outside system. So oracles have to be, in a sense, trusted, right? Sources of information that you can use to plug into smart contracts.
Greg, in itself, not to derail you, but that is actually a great idea. If meteorologists could earn clout by being right the most often, kind of thing on chain
prediction market for weather.
That said, you can with prediction markets you can create decentralized oracles as well. So like that's what the Augur protocol was all about, for example.
And so
I was trying to think of what Augur.
Yes, Augur was awesome. That is two very interesting pieces too, because even minting an NFT is in the simplest form an oracle, because you're providing outside info saying, I want 3 of those, here's some ETH, versus here's some arbitrary data that the smart contract needs in order to function. And hopefully you either trust the source of this data or there's some other backing behind it.
Right.
Yeah. And
I think of them sort of like bot users too, because they're like, they provide inputs that are human-like from outside. Like as a person puts in how many shares they want to trade of whatever token, or and they click on the entity they want. But this is like how the smart contract can do that in case it's inappropriate for the person to be the person providing it.
It is somewhat abstract, and there is a lot of I will say there's a lot of tunnel vision depending upon the context you're talking about with oracles, because like say for Ethereum, it can't do shit on the outside. It can't integrate with the outside. You have to push info to it. It can't pull info. And with Dragonchain, we can do self oracle. It can pull stuff from multiple sources. But the interesting thing, so you have this big spectrum of what an oracle is. Essentially, it's interchain info, typically, but the first question, I'll start with the questions.
Chain being the quintessential example if people needed a company that's out there in the audience.
Yeah, and so how do you, the trust level is there that it might just be, well, we all trust it, or that there's a way to go back on it, or that there's a prediction market applied, or that there's a substantial amount of data that together ends up providing the truth rather than just a single, hey, the weather, it's 78 degrees outside, you know. If you for example, to solve the issue with climate data for a few weeks from now, that they've had known instances where data was faked, and or data was knowingly pulled from sources that were in error. Like
temperature measurements taken from the tarmacs of busy runways, right?
Yes, they had one where it was from some place in Siberia. It's like, oh my God, everything's going to melt, and it turns out all the sensors were above these heat pipes that they ran through this entire village, right?
Right.
And they knew that. And but if you have enough data together and everybody can look at it in full with transparency, then you have the ability to pinpoint, okay, that's an outlier. There might be an issue with that. Why is this data different than this other data here?
Right.
And
which is a consensus process ultimately, right? It needs its own decentralized network.
Yeah. And with the current metrics, there is none of that. There is no ability for us to go back and say, hey, wait a minute, your study shows this, but you changed that data. There's no way to know that except for hopefully somebody's tracking the data and they didn't clean up whatever they changed.
Right.
So, anyway.
That's why they should have like a way to contribute to temperature readings, for example, by like people's smartphones. You should just have like an aggregate of that data be the actual temperature reading for a region, because it's like a point measurement spread across all the points.
Which is probably why IBM bought Weather Underground, by the way. When you come to think about it, it's like, oh, we need to be able to control all of that.
And those aren't hypothetical issues either. It sounds like the kind of thing that people would be inclined to think, oh yeah, hypothetically that could be a problem. That probably doesn't happen so much. But like just yesterday, I was watching this guy Anton has a really good like science YouTube channel, and he was talking about something that was published, but it isn't anywhere. He had to go to the Wayback Machine to even find the research paper that was published. And even then he couldn't find it. He could only find a reference to it. You know what I mean? So like shit does go missing and get changed all the time. It's it's weird, but it's
right before the pandemic. They actually took down every single study done on surgical masking in ERs and also in dentist's office. They didn't want people to read that while it was not going to be effective at stopping microbes, it was great for backsplashes into surgeons and dentists' faces. And it was also a strong psychological signal to patients that they were in a place where sanitization was being taken care of, right? It gives you a good feeling about cleanliness.
They did. I know that I've seen studies from the pandemic in the early 20th century, the flu pandemic, that Spanish flu, I guess, that they found that use of the masks actually increased issues.
They were reusing the same mask over and over again, and they were inhaling. Basically, it's the same shit that happened to us in the Navy. We had these like firefighting, they called them SCBAs, self-contained breathing apparatus, and they had like a breathing chamber in it, right? And after a while, they figured out like, oh, that's freaking gross. You're just breathing into this tube, and then there's like bacteria growing in there, and then like it's like ugh. So they got rid of them, and they did like literally scuba tank style with a tank with compressed air. But they used to just be these little
rebreather, right?
Yeah, they used to just have like, and then different people would use like swap gear and stuff, and it was terrible.
Oh my!
Right. Oh yeah, it's actually madness.
That's why with
funny
with
part
masks,
is, have you guys ever seen a friend
dispose of the disposable mask? That's why it's disposable. That kind of thing, Yep.
Well, you're supposed to toss them every 2 to 3 hours and never reuse them if you take them off. If you touch
in the street too, right?
If you touch your face, you're supposed to replace it.
Or you can sanitize. You can. I mean, you can sanitize them with like UV. You can put them in your dashboard, mouth out, and then the sunshine sanitizes it.
Yeah,
yay.
That's
like. Let the sun do what the sun does, that kind of thing.
I think that's actually probably why, because you're not gonna get sun on all the parts of it. It's creasy and foldy, and the way that people operate, they're ultimately just going to be putting a dirty mask back on. I mean, I saw people pull it out of the fucking glove box.
You guys,
I
you
just
guys
had to
saw
win
the
before, and it was
if
the
you saw
same one.
the
I was like, that's pretty gross.
do you see the WebM of
and try to
the
make them throw me
gal
out.
walking her dog, and it takes it uses
Mhm.
it goes to the bathroom, and she picks it up and then puts it in the trash and then puts the mask that she picked it up with back on. Anyway,
The worst one was at my
Oh,
dentist
yeah.
Oh, I did
office
see that. I did
because,
actually see that, Joe. It was terrible.
Yeah, I saw that.
sorry.
at my dentist office, they literally threatened to cancel my appointment if I continued to refuse to put a mask on.
So
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
so oracles.
Yes. So Oracle, sorry. We could go on and
Big
on.
rocks.
yeah,
As
yeah.
we
Okay,
do.
so we had a question.
Yeah. So our first question is from Dayrox, who suggested this topic. So thanks for the topic and the first question. What
Probably
ensures
the best
the
question too.
accuracy of the information?
Yes.
But ensures, see, and this is a big challenge, right? Like,
So does that
Yep.
come in with like is it attached with GPS location? Is it secured with a timestamp? Does it have additional information with the Oracle that validates it?
the answer
When it
is
comes
it
in?
depends.
I think that's fundamentally
It absolutely depends.
the design challenge around creating something like that, right? How do you ensure the accuracy of it?
It's either so inconsequential it doesn't matter if it's wrong.
Okay.
So why would it be wrong? There's enough data behind it, potentially on a separate chain, even wouldn't have to be in the
Right.
same state system. Or ideally, it's something a market approach that where a lie would cost someone. Like say with Augur system, it's reputation cost. If you could lie all you want, but you're going to lose a lot of value by
Right.
lying. So
Right, and the way you win at it is also by making the best guess you can at the actual truth.
yeah,
Right.
it's typical
So
prediction
lying
market
would
is
be
ideal. Yeah.
lying would be like a way to lose money on Augur.
Yeah. And bounties is another way, but one of the cheapest ways requires a lot of scalability, which means everything that led to whatever that Oracle data is on chain. So a tremendous amount of data backing that one value
Yep.
is probably the cheapest, most reasonable, and probably the ideal way, because then all of that data is on chain. So anybody can go back and look at it and say, oh, okay, I can see how this result was here.
There is probably a counterpoint though to make there. Like one weakness of using one data point that is aggregated from a lot of like data is the fact that that data set becomes really dependent on its inputs, right? So if you have a diverse set of data points that address the same question, it's really more the ideal. Like using aggregate data to actually make decisions about the state of one data point.
That's what I'm saying. Ideally, you wouldn't have a shit chain like Ethereum where you can't put it all in one chain, where you don't need a fucking Oracle, right? Ideally. Now, if you're using something like Ethereum, guess what? You're not in an ideal state, and you're not going to be able to get something like what you just described.
I mean, it's a security versus flexibility trade-off.
And the main point, though, is let's say I have a data point to make a decision today. I'm using data, and ideally it's on the same chain. I'm going to use data from months worth of info. Why? Because beyond bounty and prediction market, it would require, and sometimes this doesn't apply, but it would require someone to guess way back 4 months ago that they're going to put in these values because they know how it's going to come out at this point in time right now. Meaning I can look back and say it's reasonable to assume that people wouldn't have spent the money and time and effort to fake this data, which is, it would cost a lot to fake all of the data for me to make this decision right now. That you simply don't know enough of what the future,
right? Because the decision space involves that you have to admit that every decision space involves some element of future uncertainty.
Yeah, and so in the end, it ends up being a way to look at blockchain as a much better tool for providing through multiple mechanisms data quality, because it's either going to be data quality because I have enough info behind the decision I'm making, or data quality because I have a prediction market approach that's getting me the best answers, that's rewarding people for giving me the best answers, or that there is a penalty if people are lying to me about this this point of data, ideally even on all of that data that feeds into this decision.
Right.
That should be part of that prediction market itself too.
Right. Which is Joe. Would you say that that trusted execution environments are going to play a big part of the future? Then, like we need to figure out a way to decentralize those too, because if we don't, then we're going to end up with a new way that people can find someone to point a gun at, like the people that make AMD chips or whatever.
Well, it depends. It depends. It depends on the type of system, because some systems you don't need it to be decentralized. You just need to be able to own it. It's like if I have my own system and I'm getting fed in, nobody would know to put a gun against my head because I'm the one making the decision with this system. Now, if it's something like climate data or earthquake data or some public thing, then we need to. Frankly, you could probably live with transparency on it so that you could just see, wait a minute, canary in a coal mine type stuff. You can see that something is amiss, because even in, you can't have a perfectly decentralized system. We've even seen where, Bitcoin isn't decentralized. It can say it's more decentralized than the banks, but
but like the holder of a key to a trusted an encrypted trusted execution environment's parameters, right? Like that person then has the power to be censorious.
That's what, Greg, what you're talking about is there's this little project. I hope they make it. I wish them success. They're called Kudos, and they're targeting what you're talking about, where they're requiring all of their node operators on their network who are providing infrastructure and compute infrastructure, decentralized-ish kind of, but what their hardware requirements are that you can run a trusted or an encrypted environment, an encrypted execution environment, which means you have to have really expensive hardware. You have to have these,
but it also means that an AMD holds the key that you need as a proxy, so that if the government wants to fuck with you, for example, and take your network and screw with it or infiltrate it, then all they have to do is go present a court order or a national security letter or whatever to their contacts at AMD, right? That becomes a problem.
I don't know if this directly applies to what we're talking about with that, but I wanted to jump off of what Sean said, which I thought was, so it's a pretty simple example. That's a real world right now example of Oracle's Den has its own blockchain. And if you look up the Matter token on Ethereum, Ethereum gives the number of token holders that it thinks are out there, right? Mm-hmm. But Ethereum, Sean was talking about interoperability between blockchains as a role of an oracle, that kind of thing, right? So Den doesn't have an oracle set up right now that Ethereum can look at. We just don't have one. So if you go and look at the token on Ethereum, it says it's got like 64 holders or something, but that's just how many is on Ethereum, right? Because we can move Matter between Den's blockchain and the Ethereum blockchain.
Until you've proxied it over,
but
it doesn't have
in reality, there's like almost 7,000 holders of Matter that have some amount of Matter. You know what I mean? On Den's blockchain. So an oracle would be, to answer, along with the question, the way that you could trust the data from that oracle is that it's literally Den is operating the oracle. If, let's say we set one up, Den would be operating the oracle and it would be reporting what is on chain on its chain to the other chain. And that's why you can trust the data, because it's still on chain data. It's just, do you trust that chain?
So long as the APIs are publicly available and the software used to build them is open source, then everybody who wants to dig in deep can find a way to trust it. Exactly.
I wonder if Etherscan would use that if we pushed it to them. That's an interesting thought.
Probably. I couldn't imagine why they wouldn't want it.
Yeah. Anyway, just a thought. So that's an example, just reporting things that are, between different chains and stuff.
Yeah. Is that a scenario where when you guys, I still think about the key signing party conversation that we had, and how to validate identification and using that where like you don't even have to know the person, but because they're strangers, but they only know 3 different because 3 different strangers know 3 different things about you that identifies you.
Yeah,
or
the
validate.
likelihood of it being fake or incorrect goes down
Would-
tremendously every time you have a different
especially
validation.
with and it's
Yeah,
measurable
would
with
something
the
like
bounty.
that be able to validate
Mhm.
information from an oracle? Like, would multiple
It
chains
could, yeah.
be able to identify or give more validity to that information if multiple chains had different pieces of information or different points of that information that they were presenting?
Mhm.
Would
Yeah,
that
it absolutely
validate
could.
Well,
more?
that's
Yeah.
why, I mean, it anything oracled, it would be, we said prediction market, but similarly, a bounty where there's a penalty
Yep.
applied, that there's a bounty provided which will attract people to challenge the bounty, which is the point.
Yep.
And if the
Okay.
bounty remains unchallenged for a period of time, it's an increase in the score of the trust of that oracle, right?
Right.
Yeah, or something as straightforward as what like Eternal does, right? With Dragonchain again, where you're saying, like with your example, a version of that, Lisa, would be basically, here's a data point, and Eternal gets consensus with Bitcoin, with Ethereum, with Binance Smart Chain on the same data.
Okay.
Hey, Bitcoin, is this accurate? Yep, that looks right. Hey, Ethereum, does this match what you've got? Yep, that's what we got too. Hey, Binance Smart Chain, is that good on yours? Is that the same thing you have? Yep, looks good. All right, it's probably great. It's like,
Right.
I don't think that all 3 of those are lying.
Well, I mean, and the crazy thing about all this is really what blockchains were designed to solve as a problem, right? Like, the answer to all of these questions is this information needs to be validated through a consensus mechanism, right? Of some sort. So ultimately, keeping it tracked on a blockchain is how you keep it honest and transparent. And I think that maybe, other than the fact that I would say oracles have an effect societally of pushing the need for transparency to the edge, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if you want to make sure ultimately that climate data isn't being manipulated by, for instance, putting all the temperature measurements on the tarmacs of busy runways, like,
Right.
You need to make sure that the organizations doing those measurements are known, and that what they're up to is known, and that you can see what they're doing publicly, and that there are mechanisms in place to either force the truth upon them by specification, or make sure that they're telling the truth by having an accountability mechanism, like an election or something along those lines.
A great example of something that somebody should probably just freaking do is to provide and again, maybe it's by quasi prediction market. It's not even a prediction market; it's a reporting market, but where multiple people go in and report the price of milk or eggs or bread, with a known geospatial attached to say, okay, I'm here, and this is the prices that I got, and I get rewarded for providing them, and others then compete for me for that reward, and so it can be smooth. But it becomes then, even if it is imperfect, it becomes very transparent, and any changes to the algorithm would be on chain. Whereas, right now, when inflation is reported, they will literally, for political reasons, change the algorithm without reporting it. They might make an update on an obscure website to say, oh, it's called something different now. But
we're not counting bacon anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Dude, actually, that's one really great thing about Elon Musk with Twitter, is that guy has started publishing every time they make a change to the algorithm on his own feed.
Yep.
Which is pretty cool.
Very interesting. So next question, I think, was Juicy J. I gotta go find it. Wait.
There we go.
Here we go. Juicy J, thank you for your question. How do different Oracle providers compete in the market, and what factors influence their success?
Yep.
So how are oracles created? What are the Oracle providers?
So they tend to be companies, right? Like, they're really 2 types. You've got your decentralized oracles that are protocols, and you've got blockchains of their very own, essentially. And then you've got companies like Chainlink, and then like their competitor, who we we actually back we provide backup to their own nodes that they host in their own execution environments for their own like purposes. Like they want to trust their data by running it local, but they use us as a backup. Is Super Oracles, and they're like another competing company, and their competition points have a lot to do with what you would expect from most software as a service type things, right? Like better price, better accuracy, more uptime, faster response rates. Those sorts of deals tend to be the competing points for different oracles that are offering the same kind of information.
Interesting.
Can I say there's a difference between current, the reality of the situation versus what should be, and I would say mostly, and it's the symptom that I always complain about, that as far as I know, every actual implementation, and I'm probably wrong on this, right, of oracles in the crypto world have been related to exchange prices. That's always the example they give. That's always the direction is like, oh, we can put for a decentralized exchange, for example, we'll give you the price of the centralized exchanges, right? So I don't think there's been a lot of advancement even in the protocols. They're cool protocols and they're cool things, but a lot of that was all marketing driven, or what I've seen as they developed. And I don't know anything about super oracles, but I do know about the other ones. And so I think that this area of the technology is radically lacking in maturity so far. So
yeah,
there's
it's
a
really
lot
underdeveloped. It sounds like,
and a lot of it is because
number go up,
literally.
say it, Joe.
Well, let the number go up, but not beyond that. It's because the architecture of the blockchains that have the mind share and what gets written about in the tech press are lacking architecturally. That they can't provide their own oracles. They can't build in mechanisms to evaluate trust on data that gets on chain. You know, the best you can do, the most accurate oracles in the entire crypto ecosystem are transfers, because I can literally give the chain info that I own these tokens and I'm transferring them to somebody else, or purchases, minting of NFTs, because there's an actual cost behind it, and you can you can see that it happened, right? It's
transaction data is proof.
Right.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about external stuff, like say, they'll talk about, weather reporting or anything else, it's extremely lacking because no one's really built it out, because frankly, no one's actually needed it, because, why do I care what
what thermometer did you use? Who's checking
now,
the checker kind of thing? Is
if
that
it's
where
ledger data for censorship purposes, that's useful. But yeah, there's a lot, there's a lot to be done.
It's ultimately the devil in this situation, right? Is that human beings are not inclined to home in on the minutia of things, right? That's exactly how we get ruled by censors, is that we don't question these systems. If we actually gave a damn about seeing the audit reports ourselves on the sensor data from all of the world climate measurements, that process would be a lot more effective.
And you can tell,
right?
I'll tell you, probably 1/100th of a tenth of a tenth of a tenth of all the people in crypto give a shit about what they should be giving a shit about. You can look back to that point. The very people who should care about the use of this tech don't actually care about it. You can look at the Bitcoin block wars that I made fun of them on Reddit way back on the BTC subreddit, or the Bitcoin subreddit, that they were literally using a fucking Twitter poll to decide, oh, who's for this? And I'm like, you guys have a fucking blockchain. I could sign a goddamn message with my Bitcoin, and you're gonna fucking go to Twitter to vote?
That's a huge thing about like now everybody just reads the headline. Nobody reads the story. It's so much that you could post a screenshot or a picture of the headline or of the story post. People won't even click on it because it's just they read the headline, make a comment. And with crypto and on the number go upside, even people don't do any research. they will say, "Oh man, this has been audited by 2 different companies."
Yeah.
Solid. But they don't look at the audit. You click on the audit and it's like, this is the worst project I've ever seen. There's so many
I'll tell you,
problems. Nobody
will-
reads the audit. They
When we
literally are like,
launched-
oh, they've been audited. All right.
when we
It's
launched,
solid.
to tell you the level of the analysis that happens when we launched, it was so frustrating because instead of reading the white paper, people were speculating on why certain of the flags on our map of where we were located in Bellevue or Seattle, why were some of these flags in black versus white? You know, it's
Are you
just the
serious?
designer wanted some difference in the colors. We changed
Excuse
them,
me.
and they were speculating that there's some meaning behind it. It's like, why don't you guys spend your time freaking looking at the
That's
white
still-
paper and telling us if there's anything you want to know?
That's still
And
largely
that's-
where we are. I think it's a symptom of how early we are. Probably, maybe, I don't know, a symptom of a few things. But I've got a very good friend who trades crypto constantly. Right, makes money, loses money, trades. He's been doing it for like a couple of years at least, heavily. And I make fun of him to his face because we're such good friends. And because he'll come to me and be like, yeah, I bought some of this one thing here. The line looks good on the chart. I have no
Oh
idea
my
what they do.
gosh.
I don't know who they are or what they do, but this shit looks good on the chart. And I'm like, you're a fucking moron. He's like, yeah, but I made $3,000. I was like, fuck you, man.
Did you notice how the marker looks a lot like the same marker on all the other charts? Like the market moves independently of your chart, pal. Like, oh my God.
But
Feel bad for that
yeah,
guy.
that's
You probably
how we are.
lost that. You lost more than that later, right? Because even
No,
if
he
you get a
does great.
windfall,
He does. That's what pisses me off. Is he does
so
great.
he's
He has
just got
no
like
idea what
either
he's buying and
insane
selling.
luck or a good feel for when things are going to move.
There is
Like,
something weird to be said about knowing what other humans will do, even
That's
if it
exactly
doesn't make
it.
any damn sense. That's what
He
he's
makes
doing.
psychology decisions, basically. Yeah.
that's fair. I mean, he probably has an internal process that's hard to articulate.
I think part of that though is it's not humans. It's not what humans do. That's the whole argument, I guess you could say, or the debate when it comes to TA is that like 70 or 80% of trades are done by bots, which are nothing but straight up TA.
Mm-hmm.
And also they have the self-fulfilling of people doing TA. So
this pattern means this. So we'll do
Yeah.
the same action together.
right.
Yeah.
Yep. So back to our questions. I think we've already covered this, but I wanted to give Jacob Wayne credit because he did ask it on the layer. So the great picture of our buddy Clint Eastwood there. And Jacob Wayne says, I'm actually not quite sure what an oracle is, but I've heard y'all discuss the concept several times on WBRT. So I must ask an intro question. How would you describe an oracle to your fellow layman?
I thought it said lawman. And it was,
and
it was Clint Eastwood, like when he was
he's laying out the law.
He's a fad.
Speaking of oracles, I do think that there's a market for it. If anybody's interested, I've been wanting to do this forever and I've never had the time to do it. To essentially build an app that would just constantly be running in the background on your phone. So when you're driving along, you know, and the cop pulls you over, you can prove that you were not speeding because it would give you geospatial waypoints and you could do the averages and you say, look, I can prove it. I can take it to court and prove beyond shadow of doubt that I wasn't speeding. Right. I think that's an oracle.
You could do that with Waze because it shows.
Yeah,
your
but it's
speed.
not. Yeah, but Waze is.
It doesn't have
Waze
it doesn't save your history though, right?
Yeah, and it could be fake. I mean, it's like if I had a buddy who worked there, right?
So you guys want to know the ultimate thing you should do from a lawyer's standpoint when you get pulled over for speeding, right? If you want to make sure that you don't get in trouble, maximize your chances of getting of showing up at court and having the officer not be there. What you do is you say, "Oh yeah, I know exactly how fast I was going," and that's all you should say. Mm-hmm. Don't you think you were going a little fast there? No. But you refrain from making any affirmative assertions about the number.
Don't throw a number out. Just be like, "Yep,
yeah,
I know how."
Make sure. Yeah, I knew exactly how fast I was going.
So you're saying the judge?
Were you speeding a little bit there? No, I wasn't. Okay. I was going exactly the speed limit.
Okay.
And that's
you never say.
Oh, okay. So that's the lawyer's answer to like how to maximize your chances of getting off on that ticket, basically.
How to cooperate without providing evidence that damns you.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Interesting. Be cooperative without being specific, I guess.
Yeah,
So-
don't volunteer information.
Yeah, that's
I am
good.
for I am got here just in time for his question.
We
Farah?
love I am for Am. We're glad he's here. So he asks his great question and says, can you discuss the security concerns of using oracles with blockchains, and does Dragonchain use oracles?
Good question.
So
I think
did we
in
cover
the
security?
2016,
We kind of did. We kind of touched on it, and it kind of hit
Yeah.
on it. Yeah, you said it was kind of the main problem or the big deal.
Yeah, and I generically Dragonchain does not use oracles. Now, I know for certain that individual chains do use oracles.
I know
various
you're
types.
2016 or when was it 14? When was the white paper? Oracle. There's an Oracle section in your white paper, Joe.
2014. Yep.
Yeah, so it
Yep.
is spelled out.
Yeah. And it is, it's an interesting thing because some of them use self oracles. Some of them do use external oracles where data comes in from whatever. Typically, it's that own organization's data. And some, like say, Den, you could consider voting to be oracles, although it's a
Okay.
prediction market. But it is user info, some of which is going to be lying, some of which is going to be inaccurate. Those could be
Right.
considered to be oracles.
Right. Ultimately, any API you trust, really, like even
Yeah.
like the weatherchannel.com, whatever, if they've got an API, right, that's
Yep.
technically kind of an oracle.
That's a good
Yeah.
point. I hadn't thought of it that way, Joe, but you're right, because basically you're asking Den what is the most relevant content, what's interesting, what's good
Yep.
content, what's bad content. And that's
Yep.
maybe subjective,
Yeah.
but you're getting
And you can look at it. I mean, the trick to what Den at least attempts to do to demonstrate is to make that signaling scalable and cheap. There's like, okay, so the user experience is such that even a grandma wouldn't hesitate to say, "Oh, yeah, that's good content," right? And that's what we need, because if you don't have that, if the level, the user, the UI, the user experience itself requires that you be technically able to use MetaMask, and that you have enough money to pay the fee to provide this signal, you're going to limit radically the value, mostly in a volume of data that you can use to process. And so that was some of the thing we wanted to do, is show like every action's on chain, every vote's on chain, every all of the scarcity of that energy that you're voting with is on chain. So it's all put together, but it's all a bunch of oracles if you want to look at it. I think the tendency to focus on oracles is maybe a little bit too much right now, because they haven't really been needed yet. But I
think the most commonly used one is probably the most boring one, which is, what is the price?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you could also have like I think randomness oracles are probably the most trustworthy right now.
But see, I don't even know about that, because I prefer, and this is weird because just like, and this is why it's early, that the semantics aren't there. And I will tell you, it is somewhat annoying. We will always come up with something that then later is changed in terms. Like say, we have what was considered, we have level 1 through 5 verifications. Back in the day when we did that, everyone was telling us, oh, no, Ethereum will scale. We won't need this separation. We won't need this hybrid. It's like, and guess what? It doesn't. And now the entire world thinks, well, Ethereum, you have a level layer 2 chains. So,
and in fairness, it can. It just needs 20 years of Moore's law to get there.
Yeah, but that's the point.
Right.
It's like, it's structurally, there are better architectures than that.
Right. Well, what Joe's saying though is that these, like, it's basically, it's not only is it accepted, it's expected now that you have these layer 2 solutions.
Yeah. So it's something that we called out years back.
I think they can be quite dangerous.
Now they're doing it. But because Vitalik, because you have money skeleton saying something, now all of a sudden, oh, it's golden. It's truth. There you go. That's what
That
it
is a
It's
fantastic
obvious.
name.
We all knew this in advance.
Where did you hear
And by
that?
the way, and we're going to call it this, and that's why I say that even the randomness stuff, we introduced that provable fairness in contests, right? We demonstrated it with Bitcoin and Eternal, right? And we've built systems where we gave away like 50, 60 grand. I can't remember how much it was worth at the time during the open source money thing. And now I think the better term is to call it, and by the way, other projects copied that term and they didn't provide the same value, but they used the term, and it's frustrating, whatever. But
so you're saying that the word itself has become sort of been eaten by its own overuse.
Yeah, well, no, it is
or
that
the design concept as being necessary.
The concept comes to be understood as, holy shit, that is great. And then someone in the number go up world will come up with a name that they then use. Whatever. I don't care so much about that. It's just that how do I say this? I think, speaking of that, for randomness oracles, I think it's more important to consider the reality of, we don't care if something's random. We care if it's unpredictable. And the fact that we have a measure on chains themselves, so we can measure how much it would cost to affect the next block on Bitcoin or Ethereum, let alone a block that is 1,000 blocks away from right now, that it's a radical cost to do that. And it's actually measurable, that is the right way. And I've taken to calling it provable or measurable unpredictability, which, if I have a poker hand, I don't care, because if you're using an atomic clock to generate a random number, you could still cheat and I wouldn't freaking know it.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. I mean, a QRNG, right? Like doesn't have any validity unless it's sitting in front of you any more than. Right.
Yeah. If I'm the one who set it up and I'm watching it, maybe, but then you can't trust the hand that you were dealt, right? If we're playing poker online, the ability to tie it to a future event that no one can predict and that we can measure how much it would cost for someone to play with that number is what you really want. So,
and this is the kind of thing that happens over and over again too. And engineers typically will know what's necessary and what's important, and even technicians that aren't necessarily engineers like me that understand the technology. And I've seen it happen twice with Bitcoin, where I used to get made fun of back when I was like mining Darkcoin and Dash, because and the Bitcoiners would be like, oh, they're using CoinJoin. That's hilarious. They're so ha ha. And then later on, now it's like, oh, you got to use CoinJoin. You have to use CoinJoin. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the same thing with, like, I remember talking to the artist that did the cover for Citadel 21, which is a Bitcoin magazine. And I was talking to him about something that we're doing with Dragonchain. I was like, hey, love your work. I'm a big fan as an artist. I think you do great stuff. We're doing what do you think about this? We have these NFTs that are actually secured to Bitcoin, right? So even though it's not directly on Bitcoin, it scales well because we're doing it off, but then we secure it to Bitcoin. So we're still paying a transaction fee and we're doing it, the way. And he was all like, why would you even do that? You should just, if you're developing, you should develop on Bitcoin. Don't develop somewhere else. You're wasting your time. And then now it's like, oh, please don't develop NFTs on Bitcoin. That's the latest thing. It's like, oh, can we not? Oh, that's the wrong way to use it, And it's like, geez, people. And then, just, I guess because I'm venting, I just want to say that shit pisses me off because people pretend like they were never saying the opposite of what they're saying today, and it's maybe speculators catching up to engineers.
Yeah. Do you think we need, and this is the kind of another extension on this question, right? Like, do you think mental poker as an algorithm, like a concept, protocol wise, plays a role in making sure that Oracle data, or like whatever we want to call them now, is trusted? Not knowing what one player said until all the players are in really might help to a certain degree keep things honest.
Yeah. Well, I would say yes.
I go back and forth on
like
that.
Say if there were a situation where let's say an exchange price were there and it were getting an aggregate of all the exchanges, and it's a known, trustworthy group from public APIs, and I've looked at the data a few times, but that doesn't even exist. I mean, in all reality, the mental poker that's going on behind the scenes is, oh, it's an oracle from the project that I am invested in and I have a bag of, so I'm going to trust it. Nobody actually looks at the data. So,
well, I mean, and you know, I was actually, just to make sure I'm being clear, I was specifically referring to like the cryptographic concept of mental poker, where like you have keys that are all played all at once, so that the information has a simultaneous reveal. Keeps people from sort of cheating in advance, because the way that data is reported is all at once.
That could be a great mechanism, definitely. Certain types of data, that's awesome. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. There's actually it's weird because it's the most benignly named subject in cryptography, right? You don't realize that there's like a whole mess of craziness behind it, because when you reference it, there's like the colloquial mental poker, and then there's like
any of those structurally based algorithms are always interesting and usually very effective. Like say, you as a lawyer, you probably know, and I don't remember the details, but I remember that in Roman courts, that the defendant, when they were about to be judged, right? So let's say they would have to offer two options. So essentially, if they were guilty, they're going to offer up something short of not execution but jail time, versus then they aren't going to put up it's like, no, you're going to set me free, because they know that they're likely going to be found guilty. And so it became this game where I guess if I remember right, the prosecution would say, we want this, and they would give something less than that.
The juries should totally recommend the sentence.
Yeah. I mean, anyway, that's awesome,
because they're the ones who are going to have like the most direct knowledge of the actual story. Like, to me, that would make the most sense.
Yep.
That goes to well, not to get on a whole other subject, because we're about to wrap things up. But when we had the idea about using blockchain with in governments, and you guys were talking about, I guess it was back in the Roman days, where like the next guy, they were only senator or in charge for a short period of time, so they didn't change things too much because they knew it was going to be the next guy was going to turn it back on them. Having that accountability, knowing that it was going to apply to them as well, I think
that would be novel
a little
today,
more accountable. Yeah, if you didn't have sovereign immunity covering every corruption that you.
Now, I'm in favor of, by the way, if anything, a more extreme justice for the people who make those laws. Like, say the same thing with the architects in ancient days having to stand underneath the arch when they got rid of the scaffolding, because it's like, you should die, not somebody else. You should die if it fails, right? Anyway,
I personally think we should use exile as a punishment more often.
Yes,
I think that's kind.
Pay-per-view island exile is what I'm all for, right?
Yeah. We can we can send them to, I don't know, like Ukraine. I guess it could be part of our aid package.
My goodness. Well, I learned a lot today. I hope everyone else learned a lot about oracles. There's definitely a strong use case. I think it brings a lot of data. The cross-chain application of it, watching the chains work together to share information. I think that's really great. So we're building parallel systems, moving forward, creating solutions for the future. I think that's all great stuff for us. So let's go around the horn and let everybody know.
Look at this comment.
It's pretty
funny.
What did it say?
Can't exile with open borders.
Kind of hard.
Well, sure you can. You just have to send them back a lot.
We can just do a hard swap. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Antarctica. The borders, they can't get to the open border if we leave them there.
That works. So Greg, what's going on at Rivet? Let us know.
Well, we have now we didn't intend really to announce it super publicly, but Polygon is in beta, and for those of us out there who care about SLAs, it doesn't apply because it's in beta. But take as proof yesterday what you will from how quickly we were able to get back, and how we were actually the only people on the node side informing folks in the community what was actually going on. The reason I ended up talking to the CoinDesk guys, because we were the only people who bothered to post in the Polygon Discord that we discovered it was a big block reorg, and that ended up getting screenshotted. So we'll have our SLA up and running sooner than later, but our endpoint's pretty solid as it is, and it's certainly quicker to recover and quicker to respond than just about anybody out there.
It's pretty good for beta, huh?
Now, setting that aside for one moment, I wanted to touch on oracles, because you guys need to get out there and build them, right? Like, that's the number one thing, is we need more people working on the problem. So if you are at all enthralled by this conversation, you want to get into like making sure that X, Y, or Z kind of data is reliable. That is where people are needed, right? So get out there and build it. And if we can help you, we will.
Great information. Distant, what's happening in your world?
Well, first, I agree with Greg. All of the sensor data should be on chain from everywhere, whether it's Doppler radar or air traffic control data or anything. Put it on chain, and then access an oracle if you need to go through that. But I think that fixes a lot of, at least questioning and safety and reliability and stuff like that. So yeah, go build stuff. And if you want to talk about building stuff, we do that every Thursday over on Den.Social in the Den.DAO layer. We've got a governance call coming up at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. So swing by. I think today will be a pretty quick governance call, and we'll talk about Den stuff. So go sign up for Den.Social if you haven't already. It's free. I think it's pretty cool. I hope that Aaron Schwartz would love it. That's what I think about sometimes. So if you're familiar with that person and his legacy, that's something I think about a lot with Den. So come over and help us make it awesome.
That's very cool.
Cool.
And the coffee show on Wednesday mornings.
Yes.
At Coffee with Den, you can find Distant, and I've got to get back over there for my winter mornings are hard.
Yeah, we have a coffee meetup
It's
at
a
9 a.m.
great
Eastern.
show.
Yeah, 9 a.m. Eastern on Wednesdays, and that's a casual talk about whatever you want to. Wake up and drink coffee with us thing, which
a lot of problem
goes wherever it
solving
goes.
solutions. You can ask questions. He'll walk you through things on Den, lots of other things. So
and I'm
good
always
stuff.
open for AMA on that stuff too.
Yeah,
for sure.
good stuff.
Cool.
So Joe Dragon, tell us what's going on in the Dragon world. The Dragon chain.
Gosh, we're working through some migration stuff, and it's progressing very well. We have I'm writing a bunch of code for a project that isn't released yet or announced. It's probably the most fun project I've worked on in a long time, and gosh, there are a couple of other. There's at least one customer that just went live with a pretty major system, but they've not announced it yet. It's still, I think, I don't know how they describe it, but it's a limited release. They don't let everybody create accounts yet. So there's a lot going on, and most of it's pretty fun, exciting. So that's probably it. Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Sean,
Cool.
How are you doing? We had a great show on Tuesday, and how are your meme shows going?
My meme show's pretty good. Crypto meme review. I think I did it. Yeah, Tuesday night I did one.
Okay.
It was pretty good. I'm doing a special giveaway because my son Ted put out a video he's been working on for like a couple months on their the social nerds. I'm gonna do.
I watched
giveaway.
that. That was great.
Yeah, I really appreciated your comment. They thought it was very nice. And they wanted to say thanks.
Thank you.
And I told them to do this giveaway, and they're like, "Oh, so like normal people are gonna come over and crypto people, or like yeah, it's like normal people and crypto people." But check me out on Tuesdays that we do a 2-part show. First part is on Lisa's channel. Second part's on mine. Crypto meme review. Yeah, that's about it. I got a new puppy. I've been sick. I got really sick yesterday. Yeah, I woke up with a fever, and I normally have ever since I was young, my temperature's low. It's like 96. I always thought I was just so cool. That's why I was always low.
You're already partway to vampire, man.
Yeah, everyone used to like. I remember nurses when I was a kid would be like, "No, so this is broken." I'm like, no, I'm just that cool.
Hey Sean, did the Social Nerds didn't they do a Chrono Trigger episode? Did they get that out? Because I remember Ted talking about that. I wanted to go check it out.
Everything froze for a second. What?
Yeah, did you hear what I said?
No, I thought that I said I was cool and the internet was angry and
and then it proved you right.
Yeah.
I was asking you if the Social Nerds didn't they publish or they were working on a Chrono Trigger episode? Because I remember now that you mentioned Ted said something about that, right?
That's coming out. Ted they did it's a retrospective on like the Nintendo Switch, like just from when it first came out and everything.
Cool.
It's pretty good. You can go to my last meme review. I put a link in the description where you can go to the Social Nerds and check it out. But if you go and subscribe and leave a comment, you'll be registered to win some crypto.
Good stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, you can see me on here every Thursday, of course, morning. Thank you. I am. That's very sweet. And you can also find me in the Mighty Lair on Den.Social, and every weekday at 4 p.m. Central on YouTube, like Gwen Lisa. And we have a great live chat community. So jump in there and ask some questions and learn all kinds of fun stuff. But make sure you like and share this video, because the more you like and share, the more we all earn together. And when we're earning together, we're growing and learning together. So we'll see you guys next time on World Blockchain Roundtable.
Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best.
Adaptable, all capital, label radical yet rational. A tactical approach is palpable if this animal is fallible, but that conclusion is laughable. So with for all detachable from the mandible, you see it now.